who are not here. Okay. Very good, very good. Let me prepare the PowerPoint over here. This one. This is the one. Here it is. Here it is. In now the topic. Today's topic is about the Vedic society. Oh my God. The Vedic society. Let me prepare this one over here. Open. Here it is. The Vedic society. And then after that, we're going to talk about these different levels in the society. The Brahman, the Kshatriya, the Kshatrika, Vaishya, y los Sudras. Don't worry, we'll talk about those maybe tomorrow. Now, today we're going to talk the introduction about this society. Okay, now let's begin. Now, the main idea, a new civilization developed in India during the Vedic period. They call it that period the Vedic. Why? The Vedic comes from a book, a holy book that belongs to this new civilization that raised after the Harappans. Okay, don't worry, we'll talk about this one. The root of the Vedic society. Around 2000 BC, as the Harappan civilization was fading, o sea que ya estaba decayendo, a new society was forming in India. Otra nueva sociedad llegó a India. Llegó Joseph. Say Joseph Jimenez arrived. Okay, much of what we know about life in this period comes from a religious writing known as the Vedas. Now, Vedas is a holy book that the people brought it from Europe. Okay, the Vedas is the name of a collection of books, holy books, the Vedas. Okay, now these are a collection of poems, hymns, hymnos, mythos, and rituals that were passed down orally and later written down. Al inicio no existía una redacción, no existía una escritura, simplemente era un lenguaje verbal, oral. Entonces ellos lo pasaban de generación en generación en generación, hasta que ellos inventaron cómo escribir y entonces lo escribieron en unos libros. Okay, now these are the Vedas. The Vedas are a collection of poems, in myths and rituals were passed down, orally later written down. Okay. Let's move on. Now, this is the Vedas. What is the Vedas? Okay, the Vedas are a large body of religious texts. Religious texts originating in ancient India. So these are the Vedas. When you hear about the word Vedas, Vedas is a collection of religious books. It's like here, the Catholic, we have the Bible. Now they have a collection of books that represents their Bibles, like something like that. Ramirez, all right, Ramirez. Okay, composed in Vedic Sanskrit. Sanskrit, that's the language. Vedic Sanskrit. The text constitute the oldest layer of Sanskrit literature. Por eso Sanskrit es el nombre del idioma. Por ejemplo, inglés, este es un idioma, el Sanskrit. Literature and the oldest scripture in Hinduism. Hindus consider the Vedas to be a Paurusyan, which means not of a man, no es de un hombre, sino de un superhombre, superhuman, superhumano, and impersonal, authorless. O sea que no existe un autor de esto, simplemente algo que llegó así del espíritu y lo obtuvieron. Y fue pasado de generación en generación. Okay, now let's move on. Now, some historians believe that the new group of tribes arrived in the Indus River. Now, the new groups of people were called the Aryans. Okay, like it says, some historians believe that the new group of tribes arrived in the Indus River Valley around the time of Harappan decline. They called these new arrivals the Aryan. Aryans, which means nobles one, and they come from this area of Europe, East Europe, over here. They walk all the distance and they arrive here in India. They arrive here in India. These are the Aryans, and they brought the Vedas, the document, that document, religious document, the Vedas. Okay, now, over many centuries, the Aryans spread from northern India, east and south into central India in the Ganges River Valley. There, they established new societies. Other historians, however, disagree with the migration theory. They don't believe that was migration from East Europe. They don't believe that. Instead, they believe that the Vedic society developed in northern India, either in Harappan cities or further east, and spread over the time. Now, the time of government and society during those days, the Aryans. And nomads, as nomads, como nómados, pues el nómado es una persona que no se mantiene en un sitio, se ubica ahí por un cierto tiempo y después se mueve para otro lado, no echa raíces ahí. Eso es un nómade, que se mueve constantemente, un nómade, no tiene una casa. Okay, nomads, the Aryans took along their herds of animals as they moved. Se llevan todos sus rebaños de animales mientras que se movían. But over the time, they settled in a village. Con el tiempo, como todas las grandes civilizaciones, se ubicaron en un sitio y comenzaron a crecer. And began to farm. Y comenzaron a la agricultura. Unlike the Harappans, they did not build big cities. Remember the Harappans? And I'll show you a video that talks about those big cities. Now, this new civilization, the Aryans, they didn't have big cities, okay? That's the difference between the Aryans. Now, the Harappans. The Aryans live in a small communities. They live in a very small community, based mostly on family ties. No single ruling authority exists. No había una autoridad. Sin embargo, instead, each group had its own leader, often a skilled warrior. The skilled warrior was the leader in that group of community and that small community. Now, Rajan's villages were governed by Rajas. That was the name of the leader, Rajas. Rajas was a leader who ruled a village and the land around it. He was the leader, the owner of that village. Although many Rajas were related, muchos Rajas o muchos grupos eran familias, they did not always get along, no se llevaban muy bien. Sometimes Rajas joined forces before fighting a common enemy. A veces se unían para poder combatir a sus enemigos. As Rajas moved from a nomadic lifestyle to an agricultural society, competition for land and water grew, causing conflict. Mientras que ellos se movían, ellos cambiaban su estilo de vida de los nómades a quedarse en un sitio y trabajar la agricultura, comenzaron las competencias entre ellos y los conflictos. ¿Por qué? Porque de repente un grupo quería ubicarse en una área, pero esa área ya tenía otra comunidad, otro rayá. Entonces, había conflictos entre ellos, entre diferentes rayats y comunidades. Okay? A Rajan society at this time was highly structured. Families lived in a community called grammar. Las comunidades se le llamaban grammar. ¿De acuerdo? ¿Quién era el jefe del grammar? Eran los Rajá. Grammar era la comunidad y los Rajá eran los líderes de cada grammar. Now, let's talk about the language. Early Aryans are not known to have had a written language. O sea que no tenían una escritura, simplemente tenían su lenguaje oral. Because of this, they had to memorize the poems and hymns that were important in their culture, such as the Vedas. Remember I told you the Vedas is a collection of books, holy books, that talks about all the religious ceremonies, poems, and everything. Remember the Vedas. So they have to memorize it and pass it from generation until they discover this kind of writing, and this kind of writing was called Sanskrit. Now, this is an example of how the Sanskrit was written. The text carved into this stone is an ancient example of Sanskrit. While it's no longer widely spoken outside the Hindu ritual, Sanskrit remains an important ancient language. Solamente en esa área se habla de Sanskrit, en India, en ciertas partes de India. Okay. Arayan's poems and hymns were composed in a language called Sanskrit, like I just mentioned, the most important language of ancient India. At first, Sanskrit was only a spoken language. Eventually, however, the people figured out how to write it down so they could keep record and write down scriptures, which are the base for Hinduism. These Sanskrit record and scripture are major source of information about the Vedic society. Nosotros conocemos la Vedic society gracias a estos escritos. Now, the main idea, now let's stop right here, Let's talk right here, and then tomorrow we'll finish this topic about the Vedic society. Okay, tomorrow we'll talk about this Brahman. It says religion was important during the Vedic period. Many scholars call the early Hinduism of this period Vedic a religion or Brahmanism, el Brahmanismo, because of the religion's emphasis on the Vedas, los libros esos, and the belief in divine reality known as Brahman. Eso era como una especie de un ídolo, un dios, un ídolo. Tenía 4 cabezas, mira, 1, 2, 3, 4 y 4 manos. Y cada cabeza representaba un conocimiento. Dice, four heads knowledge y 4 manos. Aquí el Vedas, mira, aquí agarra el libro Vedas. Es como si fuera la Biblia de los católicos. Okay, the Vedas, the holy book of Hinduism, show that he is in charge of how the world is created. It says 4 arms represents the direction, norte, este, sur y oeste. 4, 1, 2, 3 y 4. Okay, so tomorrow we'll talk about this Brahman. Okay, now let's watch a couple of videos that talks about and try to explain or summarize what we just have seen here in this chapter. Let's begin with this one.
Welcome to another session with the Open Book. Today, let's take a brief look at the Vedic Age. But before we get into the Vedic Age, we need to talk a little bit about the Aryans. We know that some of the earliest excavations in India date back to 2200 BC and are associated with the Indus Valley civilization. Now, around 1800 BC, the urban or city-based civilization in the Indus Plains declined. A new culture and civilization emerged in India with the coming of the Aryans. The Aryans came from the Russian steppes in the area around Caspian Sea. The people who lived in this area spoke languages that are now recognized as part of the Indo-European family of languages. The Aryans entered India from Central Asia between 2000 BC and 1500 BC. This large group of nomadic cattle herders crossed the Hindu Kush mountains and came in contact with the Indus Valley civilization. Soon they settled down in India and began to spread their empire, pushing previous inhabitants deeper south. But how do we know so much about the Aryans? We read about them in the Vedas. The Vedas are the most important source of information about the Aryans. Written between 1000 to 500 BC, the Vedas have provided historians quite a bit of information about the Aryans. There are 4 Vedas in all: Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda. The Rig Veda is the oldest of these and contains 1028 hymns dedicated to gods such as Agni, Varun, and Indra. The period when the Vedas were written and when the Vedic way of life thrived is called the Vedic Age. This period roughly lasted somewhere between 1500 BC and 600 BC. It is divided into 2 major parts: the later Vedic Age, which lasted from 1000 BC to 600 BC, and the early Vedic Age, which spanned the 500 years before 1000 BC. The Aryans were divided into tribes. The tribes were cattle breeders and were called Jana or Vish. The Vedic king or Rajan was the leader of the tribe. He protected his people from the enemies, maintained law and order, and offered prayers on behalf of the tribe. He was assisted by the priest or Purohit and assemblies of elders called Sabha and Samiti. The Sabha was an assembly of selected people, while Samiti consisted of the entire tribe and anybody could express his or her opinion. The Aryans were a fiercely social group of people. The family or Kul was the basic unit of their society. The father was the head of the family and was called Grihapati. Several families formed a grama or village. In the early Vedic society, women were highly respected. They attended assemblies and public meetings and could also choose their husbands through a ceremony called Swayamvara. Ancient scholars like Patanjali and Katyayana mention that women were educated on par with men in the early Vedic period. Let's talk a little bit about the social classes during the Vedic period. The Rig Veda tells us about 3 social classes based on the kind of work that they did. The Brahmins or priests performed worship for the welfare of the king and the people. The Kshatriyas or warriors protected the people, and the Vaishyas comprised the common folk. The Shudra class emerged by the end of the Vedic period. There was another class of people called the Dasas. These were probably the descendants of the Harappan people and served their Aryan masters. But how did this social structure work with their economic life? Let's find a little about that. In the Vedic age, agriculture and animal husbandry were the 2 main occupations, and wheat, barley, and rice were cultivated on a large scale, and they bred cattle, horses, sheep, goats, and dogs. The Aryans also knew the art of weaving, chariot making, carpentry, leather, and metalwork and pottery. They primarily ate barley cakes, milk, ghee, fruits, vegetable, and meat. Their dresses were made up of cotton and wool. The Aryans were also great sportsmen. Their favorite pastimes included chariot racing, hunting, horse racing, playing dice, music, and dance. The Aryans were primarily pastoral people. They feared nature and regarded it as sacred. The sun, wind, and the rain became their gods and goddesses. Indra was the god of thunder, Agni was fire, Vayu was the wind, while Surya was the sun god. Among the female deities, Aditi was the goddess of the cosmic order, Usha the goddess of dawn, and Aranyani the forest goddess. Prayers were chanted in the open, and fire was an important part of all religious rituals. Yagnas or sacrifices were performed to please the deities for the protection of cattle and also for the growth of their family lines. Thanks to their strongly social nature and structured norms of living, the Aryans prevailed over the existing cultures, and the Vedic age was a long one, and Aryan thinking dominated the Indian subcontinent for a good 1,400 years and went on to influence a lot of the Indian culture that we have.
Okay, guys. I show you something that we're gonna watch a little bit of information that we're gonna watch eventually during the next class, but it doesn't matter. Now you have seen this, and you have this in advance. Okay, now what I want to show you right now, guys, is that you have this folder over here. Now, if you go to your platform, at Neo platform, you have this folder already. I assign it for you to send me all the documents that, all the vocabularies and assignment. Remember that I told you that you have to send me those documents. Well, don't worry, guys, you have enough times. The due date is 30 August 30. So you have time. Today is 7/17. So you have time, don't worry. So I just want to remind you this. The students should send the evidence. Remember that we did during the first trimester, you have to take picture or scan it or take the document and send it to me. Then the same thing. Says the student should send the evidence of all vocabularies and assessment from the following lesson. Now, these are the lessons that we have studied already. The geography and early Egypt. Remember, it has a vocabulary and assessment. The Old Kingdom, it has a vocabulary and assessment. The Middle and New Kingdoms, remember? You have to send me the vocabulary and the assessment question written in your notebook. Now, the next topic was Egyptian achievements, vocabulary and assessments written in your notebook. The Kush and Aksum, remember guys? Vocabulary and assessment. And last week we studied geography of early India, and this week we need to finish the Vedic society. Now, this is the last topic we are going to study in order to send me those documents, okay? So how many documents are? How many lessons, guys? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and today's week is 7. So 7 lessons. So you have to send me the 7 vocabulary and the 7 assessment questions that I assigned you guys. Remember, the questions that I assigned, you can find it in the eSire, because every week we send you all the assignment that you have to do for the week. Remember, guys? Okay, excellent. So remember, this assignment, only these documents is going to cost us, we're gonna have the value of 20 points. And during the next week, we have test number 3. Next week, we have test number 3. So test number 3 is gonna have the value of 30 points. And these documents is gonna have the value of 20. So 30 plus 20 is 5. Okay, 30 puntos va a ser el test y 20 puntos estos documentos. So 30 más 20 son 5. El que me lo tiene todo bien es 5. Now remember, over here I have the rubric. Now with this rubric, I'm going to evaluate all these assignments that you're supposed to have it in your notebook. Everything has to be written in your notebook, guys, okay, everything. So I'm going to evaluate the writing, grammar, what else? The writing, the grammars, presentation, everything else that I evaluate. Remember, like last week, last trimester, remember? Last trimester, you had to send it to me. So the same way, I'm going to evaluate those documents, guys. Anyway, if you have any doubt, any questions, do not hesitate and try to contact me and send me an email or a message asking me if you have any question, guys. Now remember, you have to send me this starting next week, not this week, starting next week. Why? Because next week you have the test. Don't start sending, you have over here already the folder, okay? But the thing is that we need to complete this one. This is the last topic we need to complete. And we haven't finished. With you guys, your 7B, then it means on Thursday, we'll finish this chapter, okay? So on Thursday, we're gonna finish this the Vedic Society chapter. And with that, you can complete all these assessment questions, okay? Okay, guys, do you have any questions? Do you have any question, guys? Questions? Gordon?
Question.
Yes, what's your question?
Are 7.
There are 7 lessons.
So if I now have these 6.
So you have to work on the rest. Now, if you wanna earn the 20 points, that's up to you. You need to send me those 7 vocabulary and those 7 assessment answers. So that's up to you. Because you should have been doing this long time ago. Every time we finish a lesson, you have to complete your assignment. You are supposed to complete your assignment. Now, if you didn't do it, then you are in trouble. Anyway, you have time.
I do 5, but
then you have not. You won't get the 20 points. Okay? You won't get. Now, if you do the test, and if you good. Yes. Now remember, the test is gonna be split in 2 parts. The test is the value of the test is 30 points plus the assessment is 20 points. So 30 plus 20 is 50. Okay, so that's up to you. So start working on the assessment that you haven't done. Comience a hacer los assessments que usted no ha hecho. Y póngase al día. Tiene que ponerse al día. ¿Por qué? Porque usted debe haber hecho eso hace rato. Clase dada, clase terminada, señor Joseph Jiménez. Understood? Okay, chicos, tengo que irme. I need to go to another class. Okay, if you have any questions, just send me any an email,
Teacher.
like that. Okay.
Teacher.
No, don't worry.
What?
I don't have time. You can contact me after class or send me an email, Gordon. Okay, don't worry. We have time for this. Okay, so don't worry, Gordon. Okay, see you guys. Have a nice week.